Dear Balkan Pod listeners, today my guest is Sirjan Civic. Dr. Sirjan is a senior policy analyst in the Open Society European Policy Institute in Brussels. Previously, he was a senior diplomat posted in the missions of the Republic of Serbia in Belgium and the Netherlands. He has been focused on rights, values, and the international law in the EU external policies and the EU enlargement negotiations. So, in line with his fields of study and experience, we will talk with him about friends and EU enlargement policy for the Western Balkans. Dear Sirjan Civic, welcome to Balkan Pod.
Really nice to be at your podcast, Dilek, that I enjoy very much listening to. So it's a pleasure.
So I'm really happy to see you here. I want to start with the Zayev's latest statement. You know, a few days ago, the Zoran Zaev, the Prime Minister of North Macedonia, stressed that EU is losing the Balkans. Also, sometimes Vučić, the President of Serbia, makes such statements. I have to tell you that they're politicians and I don't know exactly what is in their minds, but I personally agree with this argument because I wrote a master thesis about transformative power of the EU in the Western Balkans, and I concluded my thesis with this argument. So anyway, I would like to hear your opinion. What do you think about Zaev's statements? Do you think that the EU is losing the Balkans?
I think yes, and this is a process that has started many years ago, and I think why it just came now is because Prime Minister Zaev has managed to to control himself for many years because he believes I think very much in the European ideal. He wants the EU membership of his country, and he did not want to contribute to the EU rhetoric, but if to the anti-EU rhetoric in his country and in the region. But if this statement comes from him, I think this is a sign of the extent to which democratic forces in the region are losing trust in the EU, to help them achieve their goal. And you mentioned also some other politicians from the region, like the Serbian president. I think, we first have to kind of evaluate from whom these statements are coming. And the Serbian president will have his own reasons to say so, but I think if you look at the opposition in Serbia and the large part actually of the society that do not support the President Vučić's illiberal rule and that in the past were very much for the country's EU accession. Even in those kind of pockets of resistance, of democratic resistance, if you want to say like that, EU is no longer popular. And I think this is really concerning, and we are seeing this across all 6 countries of the Western Balkans.
Maybe this is the influence of France and Holland, because I don't understand why Holland and France vetoed the opening of the EU membership negotiation with Albania and North Macedonia. Holland vetoes Albania, France vetoes North Macedonia. It's interesting. And also once I watched Ed Rama's speech on this issue, and he said more or less like Dutch people don't like Albanians, they despise Albanians, something like that, etc. And what exactly these EU member countries want from these 2 small Balkan countries?
Well, I think, these are probably not the only examples. They were just the most vocal and prominent examples. You have a couple of other EU member states that are enlargement skeptic, to put it that way. And what they're doing is actually they are reading into the opinion of their citizens without really conducting scientific research on the matter. So we have clearly managed to demonstrate, for example, on the example of France, that has been, as you say, blocking North Macedonia and Albania for such a long time now. The pole has been taken over by Bulgaria, but, you will probably, France's silence on the matter is deafening. So I think, now it's just convenient because there are some other EU member states that have decided to come to the forefront of this blocking. But, this doesn't mean that these Eurosceptical Western EU member states have changed their position from the past. And, what we have managed basically to demonstrate, we conducted an opinion survey of the French population, mixed methodology. So an extremely large sample in the opinion survey and extensive focus groups in the country. And we have managed to demonstrate that whereas the majority of the people is against EU membership of the Western Balkans countries, for the vast majority of them, this issue is not politically significant at all. And it will not have any consequence on the French election if, for example, President Macron decided to full-heartedly support the EU accession of these 6 countries. So I think the problem is in the lack of a serious approach to the region. If you're building your policy exclusively on intuition and on the superficial polling, such as the Eurobarometer, when you ask the people, are you for or against the EU membership of a country you might even not know anything about, then clearly you're going to get this policy outcome that we're having now. If you actually decide to take the issue seriously as it should be, well, then we might see something different. But when I come back to your direct question, I think that unfortunately there is a lack of strategy in these EU member states, and they're thinking only about day-to-day politics in their own countries. And this has nothing to do with the perspective of the Western Balkans. It has nothing to do with even, the geopolitical aspirations of these countries and the EU. It really has something to do only with daily politics in this country and completely misread and misguided interpretation of their own citizens' political views.
Dear Srdjan, I will ask about the lack of strategy in the EU, but first of all, I want to draw attention to your report, which you mentioned also. You made a very interesting research, and I read it, and based on people and friends. Maybe our listener want to read it. The name of the report is "It's the EU, Not Western Balkan Enlargement." And no worries, I will add the link to the podcast description section. So shortly, you present a comprehensive research about the views of French on whether or not the Balkan countries, the Western Balkan countries, should join the European Union. So you know the public side and you also know the politician side. What do you think about the differences and similarities at the public and governmental level?
Clearly, it's a tail wagging the dog situation. You have policy advisors of the decision makers in the country that are making assumptions about the public's view of the issue, and they're informing the politicians that are then making statements that are having some impact on the public. And then you have this this endless vicious circle that is going on. But I would say, what we basically understood from our research is that, whereas, as I said, 59% of the French are against enlargement and their government policies, as you said, hostile towards it. On the other hand, you look at, for example, Germany and Austria, and there the opinion is similar. Superficially, it's about 57% was against enlargement in the latest opinion polls, if I'm not mistaken. And these countries are completely on the other side of the political spectrum, so to speak. They support this. And I think this has something to do also with the geopolitical importance that these individual respective EU member states accord to the region, economic interests and so on. France is far away, and apart from some defense contracts, airport, metro, infrastructural, hopeful projects, they're not really economically present in the region. This is not a region of their utmost geopolitical importance, so they can allow themselves to be amateurish on the matter, if I can express myself in that way. Whereas, if you look at the bulk of the other EU member states, for example, not to mention Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Bulgaria now is probably not the best example, but it is in their life interest that this region comes into the EU. And then, the whole kind of Central Europe, Germany, Austria, so on, we do have Mediterranean countries, as we saw to the reaction of the Bulgarian veto lately to North Macedonia, we do have a majority of the EU member states that are supportive of enlargement to the Western Balkans. And I think what we need there, and this connects to the issue of geopolitical importance of this region, we need to review the way in which the decisions are being taken at the EU level. We need to think about expanding qualified majority voting to all intermediary stages of the EU accession process, because this sort of infiltration of domestic political agendas on the decision on such important issues such as completing the process of the unification of Europe is not the way forward.
The strategy of EU we talk about just a little bit, and I'm really thinking on it. So you attend a lot of meetings, you share your views, you discuss the future of the EU in the Balkans, and you're really expert on this issue. So what is the EU's enlargement plan for the Western Balkans? Yes, maybe EU for now doesn't want to enlarge, I don't know, just asking, but what it will do, like what is its stick and carrot policy for the future? Do you think that EU has a clear future strategy for the Western Balkans?
The strategy is there, the grand strategy is there, and that is EU membership of these countries. It's just the issue is how to really implement it and how to be united on this issue, how to avoid the agendas of individual EU member states coming in the way of the implementation of this strategy. And there, we are not there at all. You probably saw the last meeting of EU Western Balkans leaders meeting in Brussels, and we heard very nice statements, but the problem with these statements is that we hear them for some years now. We hear for some years that, we need to increase the political engagement of the EU member states, leadership in the region, and so on and so forth. But we do not really have positive results yet, and I think, we need to start being serious about that. And one way is really, and it's probably a longer way, is to reform the decision-making process in the EU, as I said, to basically prevent kidnapping of the entire EU's agenda in the region by individual member states, be it Bulgaria now, be it France in the past. But I think the other issue is, how to be smart about it and how to basically do as much as we can do in the process of getting to the EU membership of these countries, so to increase the popularity of the EU within its citizens, because we started this conversation with you very correctly noting that this disappointment amongst the most progressive parts of the Western Balkan society in the EU. And I will just quote two numbers for you. In 2009, when Serbia, North Macedonia, and Albania got the visa liberalization for the EU, about 70% of the Serbs, that is now the most skeptical Western Balkans country when it comes to EU membership of their country, 70% of the Serbs back then were for the EU membership of that country. Today we're around 50%. Sometimes it's below. And I think, this is the sign that the EU is losing ground in the region. And this is a really worrying sign that somebody needs to address. And if that means, getting in temporary clash with some rough EU member states leaders that want to abuse its country's position in the EU accession process to, forward their own petty political agendas, well, then so be it. Then there should be the clash and pressure in the EU. And for the sake of, achieving the larger goal, which again, and I will just, restate it again, this is not just one in the line of endless enlargements. This is completing the job that has started in 1989, which is unification of Europe, constructing a larger community of democratic states and progressive democratic states. And the Western Balkans still is waiting to become part of that union.
I think German Chancellor Angela Merkel is a very important figure for Europe and also for Turkey. And now European Union faces up to unpredictable post-Merkel era. So the question is, who will replace her in the EU? So as I see recently, France has been building a good relationship with Serbia and Greece in the Balkans. Do you think that Macron is trying to lead the Western Balkans after Merkel?
Hope so, but to lead the Western Balkans, you need to have the trust of the politicians in this region. And that means that when, for example, North Macedonia does everything that they need to do to start even negotiating for the EU membership, then that you deliver on that promise. That means as well that when Kosovo does everything that they need to do to get the visa liberalization, well, that you get the visa liberalization. And that means also when, for example, the political leadership in Bulgaria decides to abuse their position and block North Macedonia to forward their petty political agenda back home, that means that President Macron should be vocal about that. And we are not having all this now. So if we have all these things, well, then why not? That would be possible. But again, you know what I'm saying, and we need to be politically realistic. Just look at Germany and where it stands in 6 Western Balkans countries when it comes to foreign direct investment and trade exchange. And look at France. France is nowhere near Germany, and it's not even amongst the first 10 in most of the countries of the Western Balkans. So I think, that tells you something about the way in which Chancellor Merkel was approaching this and the way in which politicians in France are approaching this. There is a profound difference. I think Chancellor Merkel, and she stated it several times, she saw this in the way that I was describing before, which was an issue of primary political importance, unification of Europe, completing the job. In France, we're having something that resembles much more, traditional foreign policy and bilateral relations with the country. And I think, they would need to make a significant leap forward, and they would need to depoliticize this issue back home because, frankly, it's artificially politicized, so it's not so difficult to depoliticize it. And then, we could see this leadership. But I think, and I said it before, leadership will come from majority. And we do have the majority. We do not need one country to lead. When Bulgaria in December decided to do what they did and block North Macedonia for the nth time, we saw Slovakia and the Czech Republic stand up to that, and very, very, very vocally and very prominently. And I think, if you want to see the spirit of this European Union and of the spirit of the larger communal goal, you would have to look also at the smaller new member states that are starting to be, I would say, restless about this lack of strategy on behalf of the bigger states.
Dear Srdjan, thank you very much for all of this, and we are running out of time, so thank you for accepting my invitation and sharing your time with me.
Dilek, I hope to see you and meet you sometime in the future again.
Dear listeners, see you next week, same day and same time.